Pawns now have personality types. NPCs now approach you for quests. Brand new vocations. Is everything we know about Dragon's Dogma 2. Hey, if you learned something new, make sure to hit that like button, and let's get into it. So, the first big change they made to Vocations are, Strider, which was in the first game, doesn't exist anymore. It's now basically been split into two new ones, called Archer and Thief. They also have a new one called Mystic Spearhand, which looks super dope. Basically, you get Darth Maul's lightsaber, and also get to cast magic, so you can basically just pretend to be a Jedi or a Sith. Looks very cool. Every vocation now has their own unique weapon skill. These, for instance, have a special dash. Mages can choose to use stamina to make their spells come out quicker. And every vocation now has a dodge, which was not the case in the first game.
For now, let's look at the fighter vocation. Wielding a one-handed sword and shield, the fighter
now, the weapon skills, you can only have 4 at a time now, instead of 6 in the original game. However, the core skill list has been made bigger, so hopefully it evens out in the end. The day-night cycle is back, of course, which is great because I thought the original Dragon's Dogma had one of the best day-night cycle games I'd ever played, because there was definitely a big difference between day and night. It really got a lot harder, and especially early in the game, you did not want to be out at nighttime.
There are dangerous monsters that only appear at night, so you need to be careful.
They now have ox carts, which are a new way to fast travel. However, you can get ambushed by enemies while traveling with them, which I think is very cool. However, I did read somewhere that fairy stones, which is the original game's way of fast traveling, are in this game. So I don't know if there's going to be the new version and old version, or if they change fairy stones or what. But I'm sure it's interesting. Now, a brand new thing they've added to this game is environment interactions. You can now use the environment to get an advantage over your enemy. And I've heard multiple people compare it to Monster Hunter World, so I'm really looking forward to that and all the different interactions. Speaking of interactions, the monsters and enemies in this game are a lot more dynamic now. For instance, the Griffin now has a nest, it now has places that it flies around in, and it even has places that it hunts, and it actually, you can see it in one of the videos, it actually swoops down and hunts, I think it was a pig or something. Also, someone who had hands-on said they saw a lizard man throw spears at harpies. Now, as far as the new monsters we know about, there's minotaurs, medusas, sphinxes, slimes, which I think are something like the flan enemies from Final Fantasy, and there's new versions of the Pyre Salamander from the original game. Apparently now there's an ice version and an electric version, so I'm very excited to fight all of these. The boss fights were definitely one of the highlights of the original Dragon's Dogma. Now on to the brand new and improved pawns. Pawns were definitely a very interesting concept and mechanic in the first game, and in ways it was the highlights, but in ways it was also the biggest complaint of the original game, especially because they wouldn't shut up. So the director Itsuno says he wants pawns now to feel a lot more lifelike and a lot less like mindless bots, and a lot more like friends that have already played the game. One way they're doing that is now pawns have personality types. You can choose 4 different personality types for your pawns when you make them. Now, if you haven't played the first game, I'm going to explain pawns real quick. Pawns are basically your party in this system. When you create your main character, you also get to create a main pawn, which will follow you throughout the game. You get to choose how they look, also their class, and their equipment. The other pawns you get are actually other players' main pawns, which when you connect to the internet, you can choose them. They're walking around. You can go to a certain place to connect to the internet to look for pawns. But it's a very interesting system. In fact, in this game, they said they wanted the pawns to hint at what type of player made them, which I don't know how they're going to do that. But I'm actually very interested in, especially when people start making their waifus and Shrek and Ugandan Knuckles. I definitely want to see what they say about that, but it sounds interesting. One thing they had in the original game, which was very cool, was say if you had a pawn, you got a pawn from someone else, and you were doing a quest. If that pawn had already did a quest with someone else, they would have very useful information for that quest. They would know basically exactly where to go, and even say if there's a boss in that quest, they would know the weakness for that boss. Now, of course, if you want, you can turn off the hints or have them not give you hints, but I always like that for if you got stuck. Now, to talk about the developers a little bit, we know who the director is. The director is Hideaki Itsuno. He directed the first Dragon's Dogma, but his resume is crazy. He's also directed Rival Schools, Power Stone, Devil May Cry 3, 4, and 5, and he's also worked on Street Fighter games. Basically, his whole career's been with Capcom. I think he worked on some Monster Hunter games. I could be wrong though. But as for producer, I'm gonna butcher this name, Hirobayashi Yoshiaki. He produced a lot of Resident Evil games, like Resident Evil 2 remake, the Resident Evil 1 remake, Resident Evil 4, 5 and 6. He's got a pretty good resume as well. But that's all for developers we know about. I tried to look up and see who was doing the score, but I couldn't get anybody, so I guess we don't know yet. But that's basically everything I wanted to cover. There's a few things I left out, but nothing big. I covered all the big points. But thanks for watching the video, especially if you watch the whole thing. Like and subscribe. I'm definitely going to be doing more coverage of this game the more information we get, and definitely when the game comes out. I remember playing Dragon's Dogma, the first one, back on my PS3, and I'm super excited for this game. So subscribe if you want videos like this, and definitely coverage of other games as well. So thanks for watching, and God bless.